everyone. It's Crystal Swearingen, the host of Crystal Spot Podcast. I'm super excited to welcome our guest today, Victoria Pelletier. Thank you so much for being on the show. Just a little bit of information about Victoria. You guys will be super excited to hear about her journey. She has 20 plus years of a corporate executive and board director. And mind you, she does not look like she's done 20 years of anything. So thank you you're looking amazing. She was nicknamed the Turnaround Queen by former colleagues and employers. She drives to inspire and empower her team and clients to change their mindset, which we're all about mindset here, that will help drive growth in business, leadership, and culture. So things that we're super excited about at Crystal Spot, we're all about mindset, mindfulness, and creating a culture of improvement and really making sure that everyone has a seat and a voice at the table. So as someone who does not subscribe to the status quo, Victoria was always ready for a new challenge. And one of those was becoming the youngest chief operating officer at the age of 24. She was president by 35 and CEO by age 41. You guys didn't hear this, but I told her I was not doing anything productive at 24. So that's pretty awesome that she was able to accomplish so many things. She was recently recognized as one of the 2023 Women of Influence by South Florida Business Journal. She was a semifinalist in the 2023 50 over 50 Women on Boards Women to Watch, and 2022 Top 30 Most Influential Business Leaders in Tech. So we're very excited to have you on the show, plus a myriad of other accolades, as she is a prolific motivational and inspirational speaker. She delivers keynotes discussing the importance of personal branding and its impact in the professional growth, being an empathetic leader and empowering employees, and the power of DEI on corporate cultures and building a life of resilience. Thank you so much, Victoria, for bearing with us while we go through your bio. I know it's always awkward when someone's reading like all your stuff, but I appreciate you being on here and thank you for the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, Crystal.
Yes. And so we've been trying to get together for a while. I told her once I read some of her information, her PR, I was like, oh, I need to get her on here. And honestly, I've been a little nervous because I feel like you're super accomplished and I've been nervous to talk to you, but that's what you want to do. You always want to find someone who gets you a little nervous so you can learn a lot from these conversations. So thank you for being willing to work with us on that. So I want to start off first, like tell us this journey about not being a typical 24-year-old. How your life started with these things.
Yeah, I often talk about my why, and I say now I often talk about my why, my lived experience, which is, driven me to where I am today. Yet I probably 10 or more years ago, until then, I wouldn't have been comfortable doing it. So I come from like extremely humble and actually difficult beginnings, early years of trauma and abuse. I was later adopted, and that desire for me to be better than biology or circumstances, what I think propelled me to be better, to do better. And so I started working at age 11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in a hair salon, doing everything except hair. My first leadership role was at 14 when I became the assistant manager of the shoe store that I worked at. And when I graduated high school at 16 and went off to university, I worked in a bank. I had zero intentions of staying kind of in the corporate world. I planned on being likely a criminal lawyer, potentially corporate lawyer. But I ran large scale operations, contact center operations in the bank, and gained more and more like progressive responsibility and leadership roles. And so I ended up staying for about 6 years when I then got recruited out to be the chief operating officer for a large outsourcing organization that had large contact center operations with financial services clients. So those were a couple of the reasons why they wanted to recruit me, even though I was inexperienced in some of the other functional areas. And I just realized how much I loved the dynamics of that, in my case, business to business professional services world, and then stayed there ever since, looking for more challenge. Like, in my bio says I'm not a status quo girl. I am not. I'm the type to break things to put them back together again. So I've fortunately been able to be a part of 18 mergers and acquisitions for like the companies I've worked for, not including ones I've supported clients with. And over the years have become extremely maniacal around building the right kind of culture that I want to work in and being the kind of leader that I would want to work for and follow.
I love that. Oh my goodness. So let's unpack a lot of this here. I actually just read a study. I think it was the Bell Institute that did a study that children who work before the age of 14, and he said when most people think when I work when I was a kid, they're thinking of jobs. Like, I don't know what you did at the hair salon, but you were working at 11 doing things. They say there's a higher level of success in adulthood, and you're definitely an example of that. And whatever the reasonings that led you having to work so young, there's some skill sets there the studies have shown that really propel you in your desire to achieve when you get older. 16 years old, graduated from high school. So that's pretty amazing as well. Where are you from? What region are you from?
So you might hear a tiny bit of the accent. So
Oh,
I'm Canadian originally. So I'm
okay.
born in Eastern Canada, but my parents, after adopting me, moved out to Western Canada. So I grew up in Calgary.
Okay.
I jokingly say it's Texas North, big oil and gas, and then got relocated right out of college to go to Toronto. So I've been Toronto, New York ever since until I decided I'm one of the thousands of New Yorkers who moved down to South Florida during COVID.
Yes, it's beautiful there. Once you start telling that, I was like, yep, I get the accent. So what was your journey like? I mean, you were so young. It's funny that we're having this conversation today. I have an 18-year-old who's a freshman in college, and she goes, and we're always about what can we listen to, what can we learn from? And she's like, where can I find inspiration? And I'm like, listening to your story at 16, graduate high school, going into career at 24. What are some things that you did as an individual to make yourself valuable to a team at such a young age?
I so I attribute a lot of my career success beyond my drive and my
Mhm.
resilience around performance. And for me, that's means a few different things. So yes, did I perform well at work, but I did that because I understood a couple of things. What are the skills that I need or the education that I need to be successful here?
Mhm.
And the other is, how is success measured? Uh, so, many companies will talk about, much broader. I think even in the roles that, I've been in, sales and revenue and profitability of the organizations I'm working for. But in some cases, some of those are skewed much more heavily in terms of how they look at my own individual performance or compensation. And
Mhm.
so I tell everyone, not just young people starting, to be really clear from a performance standpoint around what skills are needed to be successful and how your leadership in the organization itself looks at success. That is a big part of what propelled me into, higher and higher levels.
That's excellent. And so now, in your current role, you said you've done 18 mergers and acquisitions for the companies you worked for. What are some things that you learned? Because I know we have business owners here who are looking at maybe scaling, or should we merge with other people to get our brand bigger market share? What are some things that you would say, or first, maybe say the top three questions you should be asking yourself when you're considering these type of changes?
Oof, yeah, due diligence, due diligence, due diligence, really
There you
important.
go.
So, I mean, why are you looking to acquire? Is it to scale? Is it because you can complement a product or service with, the company that you're looking to acquire? So really important. And also, I've spent a lot of my career in services, and so
Mm,
in that case, you're buying the goodwill, the book of business,
yep.
and there's a lot of things that come with that. So it's been the due diligence part of looking at contracts and how long are they
Mhm.
contracted, change of control. There's lots of things there, but this is where a big part when we think about relationships and how much they matter, the personal brands we all build for ourselves and how we're known for, and the just even understanding the relationships between. I think of like was at one company where we acquired 6 companies in like 18 months.
Oh,
And
wow.
there was a woman who, as I owned and was looking to do the restructuring, I would have probably collapsed some of the leadership.
Mhm.
I quickly got in front of every one of our major clients, as well as obviously meeting with my own team to understand. We had one woman I probably would have exited at one point was so close to this one very, very large client that
Of
I
course.
knew we would have potentially lost the business. So having
Mm.
understanding like that. And then the last thing I would say is for it to be successful, particularly as the acquiring company,
Mhm.
change management is critical. So how you communicate, how do you integrate? If there's cultural differences, how are you aware of those nuances and try and manage all of those things?
Do you usually recommend that they keep on the current management for a period of time just during the transition, or negotiate that to just to kind
Uh,
of start it? Or do you change the culture from the beginning?
it here's a consultant speak. It depends. Uh,
Every case is unique. Every story is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think that there's a period of time where it is important
Mhm.
for transition. Oftentimes, the CEO, again, depending on the size of company that's being acquired, that one's almost an immediate like exit or some of the others. But there's so much institutional knowledge that comes, and I think it's important again in terms of the due diligence and that change management process to have some overlap. And in some cases, if you really want to have an integrated company, then I think it's really important for the CEO and the board or the owners to make a decision to have a blended team. I believe culture is the outcome of the policies, procedures, but also the language, action, and behaviors of the leadership team. And so you can put a mission statement and say, this is
Yeah.
aspirational and visionary, what I want. But if we're going to get there, we need to do a lot of things together, and we all own that. And that's where I think it's really important. Like I worked at IBM and we acquired Red Hat, and Red
Oh.
Hat was so like all the Red Hatters were known for like the culture that they had built. And
Mhm.
going to Big Blue, which is very different cultures, was very scary. So how do you protect that, not lose the people? But as IBM, how do you respect that and try and integrate them without breaking what was working incredibly well for them?
Definitely, because there was a reason you wanted to acquire it, because something was working. I love what you just said about the mission statement. So many businesses have a mission statement, and I will say that I've talked to people who chat GPT their mission statement. I'm like, no. I mean, I know you have to input things, but the quote I just wrote down is culture is the outcome of the language and action of the leadership. Because really, you can have a mission statement, but the culture that you're creating is done by how you treat and how you speak to people and how your actions. What are some things that you would say to a new business owner who maybe is starting to bring on company employees for the first time ever? Which a lot of people that listen are entrepreneurs who may be doing their first 1 through 5 hires. How do you set that cultural goal? How do you institute those things?
For me, it's I kind of live by the mantra of let's do the right thing, and doing the right thing, whether that be around diversity, about being a
Mhm.
really empathetic, like and human or heart-centered leader, that it doesn't require a trade-off for the business results we're looking for. The reality is it actually brings top and bottom line benefit by doing that. So focus on doing the right thing.
Mhm.
Focus on, for me, and bringing that talent on, what I would tell them is you want to hire for skill, but you also want to hire for potential, and the fit.
Yeah.
And so for me, I made some mistakes in leadership early on. I was a young leader, the only female, um, and I thought I had to show up a certain way. And
Mhm.
so this woman who's now extremely like transparent, open, oftentimes incredibly vulnerable, wouldn't have done that before. So my nickname in my late 20s was the Iron Maiden. And I
Oh,
was like, so people clearly feared me, but I'm not sure I had built the kind of followership where people would want to follow me into the proverbial fire. And so, for business leaders and entrepreneurs starting their own, like just a big part of, how we want to lead is about being authentic,
mhm.
transparent, again, like human. We show up our whole selves every day. We can't shut off the fact that, something horrible might have happened to us personally and some adversity. So being really mindful and respectful of that, I think, is also pretty important.
I love what you said, because when you first opened up and you talked about, you had some things that led to you working at 11 and then being adopted. So many times as women in business, we really shield ourselves from that vulnerability. We don't want the employer or the customer or the client to look at us in any other way, because we have to be these strong women. Like I know, like as a Black woman, sometimes if I come up to, I don't even say I won't use the words that people use, but if I'm assertive or I stand like, hey, this is what I know because of my expertise, um, it can come off like, oh, the angry Black woman, or it can come off like, well, who do you think you are? And a lot of times I've tried to model my behavior on what I thought I should be, which is never accurate. I was telling a new person this week who I just hired at my company. And he's like, well, I was going to go get all these suits. I'm like, just show up as who you are. I remember when I first started with my business, and I own a real estate brokerage. I always say it's my gig, my real gig. But when I first did that, I mean, I went to JCPenney's and bought every Worthington two-piece suit you could buy. I had every color blazer and skirt because that's who I thought I had to be. And I really love that in this new generation, and as we were evolving as humans and realizing that we all have human experiences, that women and people are showing up authentic and vulnerable. And I think that's really good when you're trying to create a culture, because then your people who you said were not going to be followers because they had you as something to fear, now can believe in you and entrust their future path in you. And I love that. So when you're talking about personal branding, we're kind of talking about the same thing, building a culture and how do you appear to people being authentic. What are some key elements of personal branding that someone should look at? And how are some ways that you can get started figuring those things out?
So what I would say, first of all, is we should all be, focused on curating our brand. And that doesn't mean it's fake. It's just, I mean, we need to be really intentional around how we want to show up and what we want people to know us about. And we need to start and build that, much like building our network, long before we ever actually need it. I was telling my older son, who's 23, about getting on LinkedIn. He's like, oh, mom, that's for old people. I'm like, well, dude, that's where the people who are going to hire you are.
You have
And they
jobs.
want to I'm like, they want to know more than just that you went to school for computer engineering. So, so I think we need to be building it early, often. Like you need to be, it's not like a set it and forget it. What I would tell you about personal brand is I think there's four elements to that. And most people only focus on the first one. And the first is your subject matter expertise, the what you do and for how long you've done it. So, you're, real estate guru. Okay, great. And maybe in certain neighborhoods or areas, right? So that's the what for you likely, but you're so much more than that. So then the second part is, who are you and what is your story? What are your passions, your interests, values? That is what builds connection. It creates a spark for people to want to engage. You're like, oh, well, I play that sport too, or I have this interest. And then the third one is, what makes you different from others? What is the unique value proposition, if you will, for brand you? And so for me, for example, that would be, I'm radically candid in business. I am, to quote Kim Scott, right, in her book, I'm going to be very direct and transparent. We're going to put all of our cards on the table, and I'm going to do this from a place of care and compassion, and ideally for progress. And so there's no meeting after the meeting. This passive aggressive stuff does not work with me. And I will not tell my clients what they want to hear. I'm going to tell them what they need to hear. Right. And so that's one of my unique differentiators. So figure out what that is. And then the last in that is, what do you want to be known for? That legacy or impact. For me, on my proverbial tombstone, that like, it's not going to state, my success in sales and revenue and profitability that I drove for the companies that I worked for. I want that legacy and impact to be around who I was as a human. I raised two good humans. What did I do to make the world a better place, both and small, in terms of whether it's the workforces that I worked in, the communities I lived in, or the world at large? And what did I stand for around things like diversity and inclusion, and around being that different kind of human-centered leader? That's mine. So it's subject matter expertise, your who you are, your story, your passions, your interests, what makes you different, and what's that legacy, or what do you want to be known for?
That's probably the best way I've ever heard that described. People tell you about how to just find your personal brand. And I liked how you said that. That was very clear and concise. Anyone listening, please go back and write those down again, because that makes a lot of sense, because you're out there as the expert of whatever field that you're promoting yourself in. But I think that that second part, what you were talking about, well, you talk about legacy is very important, and what makes you unique. And your story. Stories are how we connect to people. That's why we watch TV. That's why we listen to podcasts, because you want to hear a story. And a lot of people haven't taken the time to figure out what their story is. And sometimes you got to put all the chapters in, even the yucky chapters. You might have to put a warning on it, but you want to have all the chapters in there. So I really appreciate you saying that, because that makes a lot of sense. And with that, as you discover your personal brand, some of the things you talked about before was relationships. Like you kept the lady on because of the relationship. One of the things that I was going to ask you about is about relationship-based selling. Like, those relationships are so key. Once you have your brand out there, you have the culture, you've developed kind of your story and what makes you unique. How do you translate that into relational based selling?
So the brand is foundational to
Mhm.
that because, again, as you said, it builds connection with others. And what I see, I mean, we all want to sell and sell quickly and grow and make money and become profitable. But to be really successful at doing that, recognize people do business with people they like and they trust, and therefore they want to do business with. And so for, me in the, B2B professional services world, RFPs get issued and,
Mhm.
different companies compete on it. And sure, procurement might look for the lowest price, in the finance team, but there's other buyers. And so actually there's a great book called The Challenger Customer. And it's
Mm.
built on to the one called The Challenger Sale that just talks about the different sort of kind of buyer types and how to sell to, different,
Okay.
I really think of it as personalities, but the Challenger Customer talks about this uniqueness in particularly B2B. It was written many years ago now, so I think the numbers I would say has gone up, but at the time when they wrote it, they said there's an average of 5.4 decision makers for every purchase now that's being.
Mhm.
So I think that's more like 7 or 8. And so you need to build relationships with those who are going to influence those decisions and
Mm.
understand what's important to them. So one, I just try and build, there's a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And
Heard
he's
of
a
that one.
shameless self-promoting consultant. You need to put a little bit of that aside, but he's got this great strategy around how you network with intentionality, yet also organically. And he talks about the coming at it from a place of generosity and not greed.
Mm.
So that's been I'm not a spiritual person, but I a little bit believe in kind of karma. And so I just I network pretty avidly and do it from a place of like genuine care. And I want to get to know you. And in doing so, I've built some trust and some connection. But the next thing is going back to earlier thing around performance. I'll ask people in business, like, tell me, like, what's important to you? What's on your what's the strategy in your business? What are the pain points that you have? How is success measured for you? And then I'm not coming with like this toolkit of solutions, and maybe that's actually what you have, but I don't want them to know that. I'm going to then walk away and come back and say, hey, Tony, I've got, this, it aligns, it solves a problem for you. And by the way, I've tweaked it like this. So you're going to look like a superstar, those kinds of things. And what the challenge is with relationship based selling is it takes time.
Yes.
Doesn't
Takes
come
time
over.
to build trust.
Right. And so I see lots of sales people and quite honestly, companies who are focused on
Mhm.
quarter to quarter results and they want to see this happen overnight, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It takes time. But that's also why I've, spent decades now working on my brand and building relationships because 6 degrees of separation is so short, particularly in the
Yes, it is.
digital world now. You never know, and people move around a lot more. So I
Mhm.
just invest a lot of time in those relationships and maintain them so that at some point there'll be some benefit, whether I'm selling to them, they're hiring me, I'm hiring them, whatever it is.
Yeah, or they can connect you to someone else who's looking to sell or hire. I mean, I
Exactly.
feel like with Instagram and social media, like I'm always on LinkedIn. So tell your 23-year-old, everyone's on LinkedIn for different reasons. Maybe you don't post your weekend photos, but you show up as a subject matter expert a lot of times. But you can connect with people. We're so connected. That 6 degrees of separation is really down to like two. Like I know one person who knows everyone I need to know. And so it kind of helps a lot to do that. What are you seeing moving forward? What are your predictions for 2024 with the way the economy is here? And we're looking at potential government shutdown in like 4 to 5 weeks. And I don't know how much you follow US politics. There's just a lot. We don't need
Well,
to talk about, we don't have to
oh my
unpack
gosh.
all of that right now.
I
Um,
followed US politics like when I was living in Canada. Now that I live in the US, although I can't vote, I'm a permanent resident, but still a Canadian
okay.
citizen. I can't vote, but I follow it closely. Right. I think there's going to be substantial change. One of the talks I would give is around the future of work, but the reality is the future
Mm,
is here now and evolving, continued like socio and economic like conditions that are causing us to need to change incredibly quickly. So where we work has changed for sure. In a remote first kind of environment, although I'm a big supporter of the hybrid working model. And again, that doesn't work for your business where you need to physically go, or for manufacturing or certain types of
Mhm.
industries. But for those who can, offering that flexibility is very, very important. We're seeing a massive pushback from employees of companies where they've mandated a significant return to the to
I just read that headline yesterday. People, they're pushing back and they're not wanting to go. They're like, I'm not going. I'm not going to
right.
be in the car. I'm not going to spend my life. I'm not going to trade my quality time and quality of life to be in traffic for 2 hours again.
So I
So,
think employers, and I see it in a couple of industries pushing it more so than others, like financial services.
of course.
And maybe right now they can do it because of the market, and there's not as much option as there is, as many options for employees as there was 6 or 12 months ago. But I think the need for much more of a hybrid and flexible workplace is important. The next thing is around just, again, technological advancement and the pace at which it is coming. And
Oh,
who is not in business talking about generative AI right now? And how are we going to leverage? You said Chat GPT for their mission statements. Like, how is that being leveraged in business? And how is it being used ethically
hmm,
uh, and
key word.
connected to the technology, as well as around data and analytics? That's been at play for a number of years. But again, how do we look at collecting the right kind of data, monetizing, the data? So that, I mean, from a tech perspective. And then I say the other big difference is, in COVID really amplified this. The pendulum swung. I do think it might come back a little bit, but around the kind of leaders and companies we want to work for, the work that we're doing. More and more employees are looking to do work that is purposeful and impactful. And so, and for leaders that they trust and respect, and that they in turn believe, trust, and respect
Mhm.
them. So I just finished listening to the Audible book for the Elon Musk biography, and I'm like, just as you hear, and we've all seen it in the news headlines, but this authorized biography, I was just like, holy heck! So
Oh,
many.
he authorized it too?
It
Okay.
is authorized. It is authorized. And so just we don't want to work for, those kinds of authoritarian leaders, brilliant as they might be, like Steve Jobs was as well. But
Mhm.
there's permanently, I think, a shift to, again, purpose and impact around the kind of work that we're doing and the people we're working for.
And I think that goes back to, with COVID happening, a lot of small businesses went out of business and a lot of mom and pop shops weren't able to recover. And what I think that they have added to the workforce nationally, because small businesses are kind of the lifeblood of communities. They're the ones that sponsor the soccer league. They're the ones that do the pancake fights and all the things like that. Is we took out, buying into someone's purpose and vision. Like, I want to work for you because your vision and your values align with where I'm at. And now, if we have all the major employers being massive corporations, where it's kind of a, I don't want to say spiritless entity, but that you don't really know the purpose and the goals or who's in leadership, it becomes very difficult. Do you see that? Do you predict? And I'm going to ask you, like, you're my crystal ball today, because of all your expertise and experience. Do you predict that small businesses will come back in 24? Do you think we're in a space? I know in real estate we're seeing a lot of corporate, like hedge funds, buying up a lot of real estate. Private residential homes are being purchased by big financial hedges, which are really making it harder for your neighbor next door to buy that house. Are you thinking that small businesses will be able to come back at some rate of return, or is that outside of your purview?
Well, a lot of my work is much more on the large enterprise side,
Yes, I know.
but I think I go back to maybe a little bit more because of purpose and impact. I think we
Mhm.
want to, and I've personally made decisions to buy from, like, diverse small business
Yeah.
owners, because that matters to me. So
Mm,
when I, was putting together my, like, Christmas, I like to make for all my friends, like, these, think of it like more like a stocking, but of
yeah.
a bunch of different cool little unique things. Etsy was one of my favorite places to do it because
Perfect for small businesses. Yeah.
they were marketing, these are, Black owned businesses, these are
Mhm.
women owned businesses, LGBT, and beyond. And so I think there's a lot of people that are in that camp or that
I
boat.
would
I even
agree.
think of, I moved to Miami Beach from New York, and I live close to, I'm in South Beach, and Lincoln
Mhm.
Road is one road with all these
Yeah.
shops. And like, I was disheartened. Everyone loves it and it's busy. The Cheesecake Factory came, and I'm like, okay, but I really, like, don't get me wrong. I occasionally, I don't mind wouldn't mind going there, but
It'd be
I
nice to have a local business.
I want to eat from, a much more authentic, like family-owned restaurant, or to buy from a unique shop versus the Gap and Nike that are on the store on the strip as well.
I
So
understand.
I think there's going to be a return, but to be successful, to stay in business, again, mindful of, again, the use of technology. If we're talking about good products and goods and services, I can like making sure that their products and services are online and efficient in a way that they can be distributed to their customers.
Definitely. I think that we've seen small business has grown during COVID because people became creative and started finding ways to monetize the things that they're already doing. But I think part of them, I think a lot of the business model that we had in the last 15 years was like, well, you get to this level, then you hire an assistant, then you hire this person, and using technology to really keep your expenses and your bottom line down will really help these businesses survive no matter what happens with the stock market and the economy and the government, all the
Yeah.
things, all the things. Well, where can people find you if they want to follow you? Tell us all of your goods and your website and all those good things.
Well, I like to say that all of my hard work on personal branding is paid off, because if you Google me, I'm the majority of the first many, many pages.
Yeah.
However, to make it simpler for your listening audience, I do have a website, which is Victoria-Pelletier.com, and they can read my content there. I actually post podcasts that I participate on there as well. My book speaking. But if they also want to choose to connect out with me on those platforms of their choice, LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, whatever, they can do that from there.
Excellent, excellent. And I saw that you have a book. Where can they get that on your website as well?
On my website, and they can stay tuned. I'm in the midst of writing 2 more.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you so much for being on here. I hope you're loving Miami. I love to visit Miami. So if I come next time, I will call you.
Definitely.
And thank you for being on the show and sharing your expertise and your vast amount of knowledge. It's been very helpful. I appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.